Welcome back to The Explainer. This is Chapter 5 of What Makes a Great Presales. Today, we are skipping the technical weeds entirely. Instead, we are diving straight into the psychology of enterprise buyers. Because, as you probably know, technical perfection is really only half the battle. Picture this. You walk into a conference room, and there are 7 distinct stakeholders sitting there just waiting for your pitch. You have got the IT director, a couple of systems engineers, a finance manager, maybe a procurement officer, an internal auditor, and the CTO. You sit down, open your laptop, and kick things off. For 2 solid hours, you deliver a completely flawless technical presentation. Every single architecture diagram and IO apps benchmark is absolutely spot on. It is a masterpiece. But then, 2 weeks later, your proposal gets rejected. So what happened? Well, the finance manager was checking her phone the entire time. The internal auditor literally never asked a single question, and the procurement officer was just silent. You see, you gave a perfect technical pitch, but you still lost the deal because you were talking to the wrong people. A lot of us in technical sales fall into this trap. We build our whole strategy around convincing that one person with the massive title, but we really need to shatter this myth of the single decision maker. An enterprise purchase decision is a complex process. It is not a single person. You are dealing with multiple stakeholders, all driven by completely different motivations. And if you ignore that diversity in the room, you are pretty much guaranteeing a loss. So let us break down the 5 distinct profiles you are going to encounter out there. Starting with the heavy hitter, the economic buyer. This is the stakeholder who actually controls the budget. They hold the ultimate yes or no authority. Now, their title isn't always CEO. They might be a division head or a department director, but here is the critical thing to remember. This person absolutely does not care about your IOPS benchmarks or how elegant your storage architecture is. If you want to win them over, you have to speak their language. That means talking purely in terms of business value, ROI, and risk reduction. Their biggest fear is making a bad investment and having the whole organization question their judgment a year from now. What motivates them? Outpacing the competition. So, your action step here is super clear. You need to equip them with a concise 1-page executive summary. Give them something that advocates for you when you are no longer in the room. Now, that economic buyer rarely makes a move completely alone. They rely heavily on our next profile, the technical buyer. This is the evaluator who cannot approve the budget, but they hold absolute veto power over the technical fit. We are usually talking about a systems engineer or an architect here, someone who will stop the process cold if your specs fall short. In most organizations, the economic buyer will not move an inch without a green light from this person. Their language, it is all about specs, compliance, and security. Their absolute worst nightmare is making a technical mistake and taking the blame for a massive system failure down the road. So to tap into their motivation of protecting system integrity, you have to go deep with them, answer their questions honestly, and never try to dodge the unknowns. If you try to hide even a single technical flaw, it will permanently destroy your credibility. But hey, be really careful not to fall into the comfort trap here. It is so easy to spend your entire meeting geeking out over technical specs with this buyer because, well, you probably share the same background. But if you do that, you end up completely ignoring the business case and the ROI that the economic buyer desperately needs to hear. To win the deal, you have to be fluent in both languages. Next up, we have the people who are actually going to touch the product, the user buyer. These are your frontline operators, the folks who are going to live with and manage this system every single day. Sure, they might lack formal influence over signing the actual contract, but believe me, their passive resistance can absolutely destroy an implementation over the long term. They care about things like ease of use and learning curves. Honestly, they are terrified of their daily jobs getting harder and losing control of the workflows they already know. They just want to work faster with fewer interruptions. The best thing you can do? Bring them into the conversation early. Ask them directly how the solution will impact their daily routine. That transforms their fear of change into really powerful internal advocacy. Because if they love the system, they are going to tell everyone else. Now, to survive this incredibly complex web, you are going to need a champion. This is your internal advocate, the person fighting the organizational battle on your behalf. They are the ones briefing the executives, handling internal objections, and defending you against competitors. A lot of times, this is a mid-level manager who is basically staking their own personal reputation on your success. A true champion is special because they speak both technical and business languages. But remember, their biggest fear is recommending you and then failing because they are taking a massive personal risk for you. Their main motivation is being recognized for making the right call. So you have to arm your champion. Give them the exact data, the competitive differentiators, and the briefing documents they need to persuade that economic buyer when you are nowhere near the building. And that brings us to the final variable in the room, the blocker. This is the stakeholder who complicates the entire process, maybe because they prefer a different vendor, or maybe just out of a fear of change. Now, they are not always acting in bad faith, but ignoring them is a massive mistake. A single negative word from a blocker can literally ruin months of your hard work. You need specific tactics for dealing with these folks. First, hit their technical objections head-on with concrete facts. Second, mitigate their fear of change by laying out crystal-clear migration and training plans. And if they are just totally loyal to a competitor, you need to neutralize their influence by strengthening the bond between your champion and the economic buyer. Look, you might never fully win a blocker over, but if you understand what is driving them, you can neutralize their impact completely. Okay, so knowing these 5 profiles is step 1. But step 2 is actually identifying them out in the wild. When you walk into a room, you have to observe behavior. Do not just listen to the loudest voice in the room. Instead, ask yourself this one critical question. Who said the least and wrote the most? More often than not, that quiet note-taker is your true economic buyer. You really have to read the room actively. Figure out who organized the meeting, because that is usually your technical buyer or a potential champion. Watch the body language. Who leans in? Who pulls back? Pay attention to who stays totally quiet but takes extensive notes. You want to map their physical reactions, not just the verbal answers they give you. Building a mental map of these physical cues gives you a massive advantage. I promise you, no formal org chart is ever going to give you that kind of insight. At the end of the day, mastering the psychology of these 5 profiles is the absolute only way to ensure your perfect technical presentation actually closes the deal. Think about it like this. Technical knowledge gets you into the room, but human knowledge, that is what gets you out, having won. So start observing the room differently. Stop throwing technical specs at economic buyers and just watch how your success rate transforms. The next time you walk into a pitch, ask yourself, are you just presenting your product or are you actually reading the room?